G'day humans, welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas, and few comedians have made people as uncomfortable and tested the dangerous edges of propriety like David Walliams. If you're in America, it's probably hard to articulate just how huge his BBC TV sketch comedy show, Little Britain, was. For years, wherever you went, you would overhear someone in a pub or a park or an office mouthing off one of David or Matt's catchphrases from characters like an old-fashioned transvestite.
But I'm a lady. I don't have a testicle.
To the carer for a wheelchair user.
Oh, that one.
That one?
Yeah.
Well, that says with deepest sympathy.
Yeah,
Well, that's what you send someone when somebody died.
no. Oh, that one.
To the gay political staffer who is in love with his boss, the Prime Minister.
Oh, Prime Minister, I want it so bad. It's this file.
Oh, yes, this file, yes! I want this file so bad, yes. What is it?
To the least helpful customer service agent in the world.
Computer says no.
And when earlier this year a global IT failure grounded planes and wreaked havoc on banks and businesses all over the world, the front page of Britain's Sun newspaper ran only one headline: Computer says no. 21 years after that phrase left David's lips on TV for the first time and entered the global lexicon. David had a second TV sketch comedy show with Matt Lucas, Come Fly With Me. He did 10 seasons as a judge with Simon Cowell on Britain's Got Talent. He's written 43 children's books that have sold over 60 million copies. And David and I recently went on a 15-show, 6-week tour of 13 cities across Australia and New Zealand, where I interviewed him in front of tens of thousands of roaring fans and hysterical punters. It was an absolute gas. It was a laugh. And before our final show in Perth, he reluctantly agreed to sit down with me. I suppose we had become somewhat close over the course of travelling together for 6 weeks. And he sloughed off his polished showmanship and was willing to have an unrehearsed, uncomfortable conversation about taboos, offensiveness, sexuality, comedy, transgenderism, and how he and Matt created some of the most memorable characters of 21st century television. The video of this podcast looks great, by the way. Not the bit you're looking at now, the bit that I shot with David. It's lovely to see David's reactions and the twinkle in his eye. So this would be a good chance to hop over to the YouTube page if you're listening to the audio version and to watch this conversation there. As always, all the best stuff of this show, including extra episodes and interactive live streams, are on Substack, which you can join with one click for free using the link in the show notes. Please enjoy even half as much as I did the one and only comedy legend, David Walliams. How are you feeling?
Fine, thank you.
It's been 14 shows. We've got a final 15th show tonight.
Yeah.
What's your takeaway?
Well, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's fun to be on stage if you like performing. It's a new sort of thing for me because I haven't done a kind of Q&A type show like this before, other than maybe being interviewed at a book festival or something, but it's a bit different. And hearing laughter is you never tire of that. So and so much of my time is spent writing books or scripts or whatever, is that I'm the performer side of me doesn't get to always express itself, and the thing is, a book is a slow burn in terms of the sense of, I don't know, the buzz from it is a much slower one than when you walk on the stage and everyone's laughing and applauding, and that's like, oh wow.
And you don't get to spy on the people who are reading the book and chuckling to themselves.
No, I get a sense of
twisted.
It sometimes. Yeah, I get a sense of it. People come up to you and say they've enjoyed them and stuff, but you don't hear them laughing at bits in the book. So
it's good, isn't it? It's interesting.
Great.
It's been interesting for me. I mean, I've never interviewed somebody who, after having just interviewed them 14 times over the past 4 or 5 weeks with exactly the same questions every single time.
But I've made it feel fresh and spontaneous.
You've made it
each
feel
time.
so fresh and spontaneous. No one would have any idea we've done it before.
Well, there's always things that didn't happen the night before and sort of curveballs
Yeah, a little
and
bit.
things.
Yeah.
That's why actually you quite like it when there's a lively audience and there's a few people making noise in there or something
Yeah.
unusual's happening. Someone's coming in late.
Yes.
Someone's brought a child.
You
to a
like
show
whipping them a
that's-
new asshole if they come in late, or if you see a youngster in the front row.
Well, it's just something I feel like the audience like to see something that they know didn't happen on another night, which is why they've bothered coming out.
Yes.
Because they're going to see something live. I mean, people always say when you do a show, they say, "Oh, the bit I really loved was the bit where it went wrong," or people love with stand-ups, they love the heckle. The people love the audience,
the
like
crowd
this.
work.
So he said, the heckler said this, and then the comedian came back and said this.
Yes.
You know, and I get it. I like those things too.
Yeah. So when you started out with Matt and you guys were doing live comedy, because one doesn't get given a television show without doing live comedy, how did that come about, the two of you doing shows?
Well, we'd met as teenagers in the National Youth Theatre. See, I'm now 53 and he's 50, so I've known him for over 30 years. And so we ended up being in a play together. Weirdly, considering Matt is such an incredible performer, he was moving the scenery around. That's the weirdest thing.
He was moving the scenery around.
Yeah.
Literally.
It was The Tempest, the Shakespeare play. And I was playing Trinculo, which is one of the comedy parts. There's two. There's a sort of comedy double act.
Right.
I mean, it's Shakespeare, so I mean, it can
occasionally be so funny.
Well, it can be funny in the hands of someone who's funny. I'm not saying I'm particularly funny, but I mean, if you just read it, off the page, it probably wouldn't make you laugh. But anyway, so I was playing a kind of good comedy role, and there were these people. It was like a sort of. Have you heard of Lindsay Kemp ever?
No.
It was this sort of. He almost did a sort of. He was a sort of talk Bowie mime, and it was in the style of one of his productions. Lots of white faces and sort of. It was quite avant-garde in some ways, even though it was the National Youth Theatre. And there were these people called the Koken, and they were all black, and they had to move the scenery around. And Matt was doing that.
So below the lowest cast member is the person who wears black and moves the ferns around in the background.
Actually, well, one is it's just so bizarre that someone didn't spot his talent in that scenario, and also what's also good is that he still wanted to do it.
Yeah,
because there is a kind of thing, isn't it? Sometimes if you're getting a really small part in a play or something, you're like, but if you still have hunger for it.
Got to say yes.
Yeah, so
say yes to everything.
So we were spending lots of time together doing this play, chatting, laughing, talking about the comedy we loved. And then soon after, Matt started doing a character on the stand-up circuit, well, probably a few years later, called Sir Bernard Chumley, and he was an old actor. Even though Matt was only probably about 20 at the time, he could convince in a lot of ways as this old actor. It was about like Peter Ustinov telling stories.
Right.
And he wore the wig that he'd had been given when he was like 10 or something, because he had alopecia.
Right.
And he was given a woman's wig to wear because there weren't any children's wigs. And he used that wig. He would wear that wig and people would think it was his hair. And then halfway through, he'd like, push, just go like that. And then the wig, and then he would get an amazing laugh at that.
And this was a one-man show that he was doing?
Well, he was doing
like
stand-up comedy
okay.
circuit. And I was doing a little bit with someone I was at university with. We were doing a kind of double act. But that sort of reached a conclusion. And then Matt, a couple of things happened. One is that, so there's quite a lot of information, but basically he was doing that and it was getting to be quite successful. And I think Bob Mortimer, because you don't know, Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer are huge.
Yes, I know of the legend of Reeves and Mortimer.
Hugely acclaimed and loved comedians in the UK. And Bob Mortimer, they were, at the sort of very, very popular, perhaps even at the peak of their popularity, or about to be. And he saw Matt's second gig, and Matt then was cast in there. They were doing this panel show called Shooting Stars that was a huge hit, and Matt was in it every week. And so he had some visibility, and he was like He's the guy from Shooting Stars.
Right.
So then we got a chance to take a show to Edinburgh, which we did in
Why you?
1995. Well, because we were writing together and we were creating stuff together.
Writing what?
We were writing. Well, we would come up with a television show that we wanted to do, and it was called The Sunday Club. It was quite a good idea, and I keep on thinking we should still do it. And basically, the idea of the show was there was a show, like a kid show, called The Sunday Club, and it was never ever broadcast, and it had become this mystery what happened to this show. and so it was like a sort of,
was it like a found footage?
yeah, it was like a found
conceit?
footage, but also with someone commentating on it. It was quite
I want to see this show.
Well, it's
I
not
want this
been
show to
made,
get made.
but it was
Let's
quite a
crowdsource it.
sophisticated
Let's
idea.
crowdfund it.
It was quite a sophisticated idea because we were the Sunday Club, so we were constantly meeting up and making like huge notes about what's happening in the Sunday Club.
Right.
And
Okay, and then you're like, we should do it in Edinburgh.
we couldn't get that show made, but we even had a meeting about it. But it was almost like it was, I don't know, like Scientologists were running it or something. There was something, there was some kind of conspiracy going on, or some other agenda was going
to
on with
contaminate
show.
the minds of young children.
Yeah, something like that.
I like it.
So, and then it just felt natural. Matt had done a little bit in Edinburgh the year before, and then it was like, oh, we'll go back to Edinburgh the next year. So we were midnight.
Yeah, right.
We were on at midnight.
You did this
Assembly
bonkers
rooms.
show in which he was playing this character of like an old,
I think
arrogant
he was only playing that. Well, he was a sort of
queen
old,
of an actor, or
buffoonish, old-fashioned actor who'd never really had success. I remember there was one really good joke where, in the first time we did this show, I played the director of the show. I came on as the director. I've got some notes for you, and all this kind of stuff. And then he goes, I said something like, and I need you in tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I can't come in tomorrow morning. I've got to fly back down to London to sign on. Signing on means getting your unemployment benefit. I remember that getting a really big laugh.
right.
So yeah, we were doing a show at Edinburgh at like midnight together.
Yeah.
And it got some buzz around it.
Can you tell the story about the gag that you put on the poster for the show, since you were on at midnight, and you were on after Graham Norton. Graham Norton was up there doing a show at 11. Then you would bump in at midnight.
I think because we did a few years there, so sometimes it's slightly kind of. We actually played the same room like 2 years in a row, so sometimes it gets fuzzy. But Graham was definitely on before us, maybe at like 10:30 or something.
Right.
And so we'd sometimes see him. Well, we'd see him every night when we were doing the show, and he was great. And we'd see his show. You get to see other people's shows for free, and his was great. But yeah, we'd arrive at the venue with our suitcases full of like props and costumes and things like that. So funny, isn't it? 11:45 or something. And anyway, so yeah, the show was called Sir Bernard Chumley's Gang Show. Oh no, Sir Bernard Chumley is Dead and Friends. I don't know why we called it that, but I don't know. It was weird. Edinburgh's like strange. It brings out some of your worst ideas, but it was fun. I don't know why we called it that. It should have been called Sir Bernard Chumley, but anyway. And we were on at midnight, so the poster, had the time on it. And then as a joke, we had on the poster free creche as we pronounce it in the UK. And we didn't think anyone would turn up and with a child, but we should have remembered that we were in Scotland and a woman did pushing a toddler in a pushchair. Where's the creche? Where's the creche? So come on. You said there's going to be a creche. He says on post there's a creche. It was just a joke. I want my money back. That's like. So, but she was the only person who thought there really was a creche.
And you were saying that in order to get to the bathroom, the audience members had to walk across the stage in front of you. And being midnight in Scotland, a fair few people have been drinking for 8 hours.
Well, it was like banked seats. Yeah. So you came in, you walked across the stage to get to your seats. And it was a constant stream, which is the right word, I guess, of men needing to urinate because they'd been drinking all day. I mean, people would come in with their pints, like that. I mean, it's really weird because when we did the Little Britain live show in arenas, it's like it's only like 50 minutes, maybe 50 minutes. There's still people who need to go to the toilet, need to go and buy a drink.
Yeah.
people would walk past the stage with the tray of like 4 drinks. They go, like that. So, you know, we're doing a show. And also, can you just, you know, you've paid your money. I mean,
I know.
You hold it in for a bit, or maybe just get the drinks. Should we wait to the interval?
I don't understand.
Weird.
Yeah, but it's this. I mean, it's like popcorn in the movies, and you know, making lots of noise in the movies,
Yeah,
rustling things in the movies. Like, do you have to eat all of those rustly lollies right now?
Well,
just wait. It's only 90 minutes.
I went to see this incredible movie called Zone of Interest. Did you see
Yes.
it? It won a couple of Oscars.
Yeah.
This genius director, Jonathan Glazer, and it's all about the Holocaust. And there's still people in front of me, like eating popcorn. And it's kind of thing, yeah, like Deadpool Wolverine, okay, but not. So, you know.
Yeah.
And then he came on to like give a talk at the end, and there's like people like scrolling through their phones and things like that. And
While he's talking.
I just despair.
I know.
It's sort of how rude. And just also like you've just seen a really profound film about kind of the greatest horror, one of the greatest horrors in history, if not the greatest, and you still need to eat some popcorn and scroll through your phone.
I know. Yeah,
and also scrolling. It's not like you've had an emergency call and you need to take it. It's just like,
I mean, the phones are a whole separate thing, but even the eating the popcorn, I don't quite understand. Like, I get that it's a tradition, but also like dead Jews, buttered popcorn don't have to go together. You could just sit with the dead Jews for 100 minutes when you're watching Zone of Interest. Nazis.
I'm not joining in your.
I'm not going to.
The way you're framing this, to be honest with you.
You think dead Jews and buttered popcorn do go together? So
yes,
after Edinburgh,
yes,
then you know everyone who goes to Edinburgh wants someone from London to come up and give them a television show, and eventually this turns into Little Britain. But there was another show, the Rock Profile. We don't need to dwell on that too much. But when you get like how does Little Britain come about?
First of all, we'd done a very nice producer called Richard Wilson came to see us, and he wanted us to do something on Radio 4 with him, which was often a way also that people would end up going from BBC Radio 4 comedy to the BBC television comedy. And so we did a pilot with him, but it didn't get picked up. It was kind of around basically what we were doing in Edinburgh. And then we did another pilot that was also rejected for Radio 4 comedy. Oh, I think we just had 2 words back, lacks conviction. And so we really had to think again because we were not necessarily going to get another roll of the dice.
Right.
And then that was when the concept of the show, because before that we were just trying to do characters and sketches without really an overriding idea. And the overriding idea had become kind of more important. There was a great comedy group called the League of Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Who they had such a distinctive style and a kind of simple but strong idea of like, oh, these characters all live in the same town. And there've been other sketch shows again with you know, similar sort of an identity beyond just some sketches and characters. And so that was what was required. And then we came up with this idea of a sort of survey of British life. And I think it was so helpful because it made us have to feed into that idea. So we weren't doing sketches about, you know, I don't know, Admiral Nelson or Sherlock Holmes or whatever. We were doing sketches that were all set in contemporary Britain with characters who were sort of, you know, satires of people that you might find in some way or another. And so I think that really helped shape the content because those were the kind of things, contemporary characters in modern Britain that are going to resonate with an audience much more than just a kind of very, if you, I don't know, a funny one-off sketch about Julius Caesar or something.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that was what really, I don't know, suddenly everything fell into place. Suddenly we kind of knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
And we weren't flailing around. And also we weren't too beholden to our past in terms of what happens is you sort of, if you're a comedian and you get laughs early on doing certain characters and stuff, you feel very hesitant to leave them behind because they're the things that have propelled you to this place. But sometimes you're in a different place now and you need to adapt. So we kept on sort of trying to do our our stage show on radio or television, but it didn't work. So this new idea was the one that took us in a new direction. And so Bernard Chumley, we had a few sketches with him in the show in the first season, and they're good sketches, but they're not the ones that people remember because we had a whole load of new characters that sort of resonated more with people.
And then your mission, I guess, probably becomes, all right, who are the characters who I can put into this who are emblematic of some particular slice of contemporary British life?
They all start off with one sketch.
Yeah.
And if that sketch feels good, seems to work, and there seems to be a suggestion that it could be another scenario, then we do that. I mean, people often complain like, oh God, it was the same character every week. It's like, there are some practical reasons for that, because you can't have, shows made on a budget. You can't have like 100 different, say there's 100 sketches.
Yeah.
You don't have 100 different sets, 100 different costumes, 100 different
Yeah, but you're
wigs
selling yourself short a little bit, I think, in the sense that it's not just budgetary. There's a creative and emotional reason for people to enjoy the familiarity of like a comedic trope that becomes part of their family, and sort of they like tuning in each week, and they like the fact that they know that they're going to hear "Computer Says No" at some stage during the sketch. It wouldn't be the same if they didn't.
I mean, I used to read the Beano when I was a kid, which is this comic for kids, and it'd be the same characters, and you would really like it. I'm going to read Dennis the Menace first because I love him. Then I'm going to read the Bash Street Kids, and then I'm going to read Minnie the Minx, and it was like, and there was a great, I don't know if it's big here, called Viz. Have you ever heard of it? It's like a spoof of that for adults. Hilarious. It's one of the, you laugh out loud funny, and that had all these great characters in it. I mean, there's a character called Sid the Sexist, another one called the Fat Slags was one thing. that was turned into a film,
right?
And it was
very politically
Roger
correct.
Melly, the man on the telly, who was a sort of really funny. But again, I would turn to that and go, I really love this character, and I'll watch that one first. But anyway, it was always pretty much the same characters every month, but you didn't mind that. We would have been disappointed if someone wasn't in it.
And so when you're creating the first season of Little Britain, take just a couple of the most legendary characters for you, like Computer Says No, where does that come from?
From our genius minds. Sometimes things are observed, and so for that one, that was observed, as in I really did go to the bank to get a loan, and I was sewn into a room with a lady as close as we are, with the computer in the middle, and I said, I'd like to borrow £5,000. What's your name, address, put all the details in. And then she did that, press sort of return, and went, let's see what the computer has to say. And we sort of sat there in silence for a minute, and then went, computer says yes, like that. And so, and then the next day you're in the writing room with Matt, and you talk about this funny thing that happened, and then you start chewing the fat, and maybe for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you actually haven't even written anything down yet, because you're going through lots of scenarios. But it's a different kind of writing, because we were always writing in order to perform. So therefore, we could spend a lot of time just sort of improvising and come up with voices, characters, scenarios. And then when we felt we had something, we'd actually start putting it down on the computer.
And how did Computer Says Yes become Computer Says No?
Because once you've been throwing the idea around for a bit, it just seems funnier that someone would be negative. And it was more funny. It's funnier that somebody is... It's more frustrating. It's more comic, isn't it? Not getting what you want than getting what you want. And also someone being incredibly unhelpful. But I did go on a holiday once to Barbados, and I remember I was giving my passport to the lady at the hotel. And so I put it down, and she sort of went like that. And I had to move it like an inch closer. And that always stayed with me.
She's not going to pick it up until it's within her zone of,
And there was
she doesn't want to move her
she doesn't have to move. Yeah, and it was the same with Carol, had that quality to it as well. I mean, she was completely nothing like the lady who helped me with the loan. But it just became the same thing.
No, I mean, I think it's becoming especially resonant even in the intervening 20 years since you created it.
But I think it's like the idea is a seed, and then you've got to grow something from it. Because I think people think, oh, well, the idea of just, you were lucky, you just got to meet all these people who inspired your character. And there's nothing more to it than that.
No.
But it is
only a
like-
stupid person would think that, because what you're doing is putting your finger on something that we all have to deal with pretty much every day, which is government or bureaucratic or organizational annoying kind of, malarkey where you have to fill out the form in triplicate, or the Uber driver doesn't want to take you the right way because the app isn't working correctly.
I know, it's so frustrating. Isn't
computer says no, has infused our lives.
It's the deferring to the technology.
Yes.
Which is quite strange because the technology is meant to...
And it can ruin your life. Like, you're waiting on hold for an hour and 15 minutes to talk to someone at the airline, and then you realize 3 minutes into the conversation that their job is just to get you off the line without having helped you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wearing dresses, I'm a lady, is probably the other big sort of character that you're best known for. Where does that come from?
I don't know exactly, but obviously I'd been dressing as a woman for most of my life and childhood.
Well, maybe we need to ask the prior question of where does that come from?
Well, I'd certainly... My sister used to dress me up, but I can't blame her because obviously I like doing it as well. It just, to me, it was always something fun and something freeing, dressing as a girl and playing girls' parts in the school plays and stuff. Why is a boy drawn to what's considered feminine things? It's hard to say exactly. I mean, I like Wonder Woman. There was a massive show at the time. Linda Carter, one of those beautiful women. But I used to play Wonder Woman in the playground,
Yeah, right.
Because she used to spin around.
So, and did you do it for laughs, or did you do it because it felt good?
I think it felt good. And then I think what happened is you get bullied for it, and then you turn it into laughs as a way of deflecting the being laughed. You're being laughed at. So that's your worst fear. So you then go, oh no, it's a joke. It's a joke.
Now I'm going to own it.
I'm going to own it. And actually I'm going to be camper and more feminine and flamboyant than you can ever imagine. And now you're going to think I'm funny because of it. And that's going to be my thing.
So do you think you were a little sort of trans curious?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's not uncommon, is it? I mean, I always say, with friends and stuff, so can we just have a night out where we all just go out, dressed as women? Wouldn't it just be wonderful? And so I do enjoy it. But I don't want to sort of, I know some people, it's like a kind of big part of their identity. There's a need to do it and all that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's that. It's me playing around, but I still, like, if you said, we've got some wigs and dresses and stuff and we're going to go out for the night, it would be like my favorite night ever. I mean, my friend had a drag stag and we all dressed up in women's clothing.
A stag night is what Brits call a bachelor party?
Bachelor party, yeah. And we were all in drag. It was the best fun ever.
A drag bachelor party.
And I had a costume made, which is Grace Jones's costume for that she wears in A View to a Kill, where they go to the races. I think it's Ascot or something. And it's a whole massive, like, pyramid headdress and red dress. I mean, it was like, I went to all that trouble. And it was like, why would anyone do that?
Have you ever thought about just going, stuff it, I'm just going to show up to an award ceremony in a dress?
I mean, I sort of would do, but it's become sort of so politicized, isn't it?
Well, it has now.
I think
what
people
about in
would be worried
2005?
that you were, well, I'd wear nail varnish or something. But I suppose now it's become sort of a serious subject. So therefore, you wouldn't want someone to think you're somehow laughing at them or something like that.
Right.
Eddie Izzard is the one who did it brilliantly because he interestingly, I saw, I'm such a fan, but he just looks amazing. He was almost like a sort of David Bowie type thing where he'd like wear a suit, maybe with no shirt and maybe a little bit of jewelry or something, some makeup, but in his hair, his normal hair. He wasn't like trying to pass as a woman. It was just like he's got his own way of dressing that's really, really cool, and he's going to wear high heels, like a fitted shirt, a fitted velvet jacket or something. It looked great.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I was watching This Is It, which is the Michael Jackson documentary about him putting on his last concert that he never got to do. And I was watching it with who was my ex-wife, who was a model, and she said, these are all the clothes he was wearing, Michael Jackson was wearing, were all women's clothes from catwalks and She said that's straight off the Chanel castle. That's straight off. That's Balmain, that jacket. And there was all these things he was wearing.
How interesting.
Yeah. All women's.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he was
Yeah.
very slight and everything.
Yeah.
And he had obviously a flamboyant way of dressing. It was quite interesting. I hadn't really considered.
No, I
Because
haven't.
I didn't know where he's. Yeah, I thought, well, maybe he gets the maid or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting,
Yeah,
yeah.
Eddie Izzard's been on this show, and he's also very, or she or they, is very kind of like whatever about the kind of line of questioning about his gender
Yeah.
identity as well. Like he's extremely relaxed about call me whatever you want.
I think it's great.
I'm not
I
going to
think-
be precious about it.
No, I think Eddie's, but also has the identity Susie. But sometimes when Eddie's performing, it's Eddie. But I actually think he's been a brilliant advocate for that. But also, I just feel he's been his own person, and I think there's nothing better than that. Isn't there? Just going, this is me. This is who I am, and it also, I think it it meant everyone knew who he was as well. I mean, obviously fantastically funny, but it was interesting.
Yes.
Oh, have you Eddie Izzard? Yeah, he's this transvestite.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a transvestite comedian, but he's not a drag act.
No, and he also never seemed to be doing it in a look at me way. Of
No,
like,
it's just
I'm jumping on a
who he
bandwagon.
is, and he looked fabulous. So I kind of always responded to him. I'm saying him because then he was Eddie Izzard. But yeah,
I'm not going to get you cancelled for dead naming a trans.
no,
person.
but he's still Eddie. Still, it's Eddie Izzard in
Yes.
sometimes.
Yeah.
One man Hamlet or something.
And so, why is the I'm a lady character dressed in like Elizabethan
Victorian clothing,
or Victorian clothing?
It was because there was a sort of observation that I felt had some truth, where often when you'd see a transvestite, it would sometimes be a kind of heightened version of women's clothing, or something from perhaps harking back to another era. Perhaps it could be just guessing, but if your first experience was kind of wearing your mum's clothes or something like that, maybe you were thinking, oh, that's what I'm drawn to, something that's sort of in the past a bit, some I don't know, more sort of idealized version,
Yes,
of fashion. I mean, it's different now, isn't it?
Femininity, I guess.
Because women now, it's different, isn't it? My mum would have never, I don't think ever wore a pair of jeans in her life.
right.
But now you can wear black jeans, black t-shirt, and some trainers, and it's girl.
I know what you're saying. The world's gone to hell. Women are just wearing whatever they want to these days.
But anyway, it was just an observation, really, and so it became. I don't know. It was just when we were thinking about what Emily would wear. We were thinking, oh, what if, instead of just a normal kind of wig, it was like a kind of, like Elizabethan wig. I think, but a lot of these things just happened by accident. Like just we went into the makeup, the wig BBC wig store, and there was a wig that was like Marie Antoinette wig, and we just thought let's put that on. See if it's funny.
Right.
I think also we needed to differentiate it because obviously we were playing a lot of female characters in Little Britain. So we need to differentiate Emily, who had to be a transvestite character, to us just dressing as women, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I see.
So I think that's probably why it ended up being one of the
drag
reasons.
extra. Yeah. Drag to the power drag. And have you copped any flack for that? Because in the 2020s, the idea of, I suppose, ridiculing a trans person because
I don't think we were
pass as
ridiculing. I always think
female.
characters are like celebrating, personally, because I think it's like I don't know. That's what I felt. All our characters were sort of winners, and then we were celebrating eccentricity, and they're funny, so you want to spend time with these characters. Well, it's just changed. The definition has changed, hasn't it, of trans? It's now a sort of much bigger umbrella term for lots of different people in lots of different situations, isn't it? Because it was very when we were. I mean, we came up with that character probably like 25 years ago, and then I think there was transvestites and there was what was called transsexuals, and so they were seen as very separate things.
Right, I see.
I'd say, and then, so
the idea of a transvestite
was somebody who was dressed.
obviously...
It's still the dictionary definition is someone who cross dresses for pleasure.
Yeah.
which is, I guess, different to it being something to do with your gender identity or perhaps a more serious kind of issue around the way you feel about yourself.
Right. And what have you made of the kind of move towards, I guess, a more dogmatic interpretation of identity politics in the past 10 years?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I find change interesting. And I mean, I wrote a book called The Boy in the Dress 15 years ago, which was sort of seen as a bit more daring then. And so it's something I've always sort of felt like celebrating difference. And so I've always thought that's exciting. But so I'm 53 now. So you never kind of think you're going to be old and you're kind of going to look at younger people and think, oh, they're doing something different, but they are. And it's exciting and interesting. And, I rather like it. I sort of think, where would I be positioning myself maybe if I was now 19 or 20? Because I went to Bristol University, did a drama degree. And, if you're going to find, I'd say that course is where you're probably going to find, not trying to do down the lawyers and the doctors and stuff like that, but, it's sort of people who are probably, if there's a group of people who are going to be most interested in that sort of area or most drawn to that area, it's probably going to be drama students.
Yeah.
Who are used to sort of playing and I don't know. So
what do you think you would be doing if you were 19?
I don't know. I mean, I think in a way I'd probably say I'm non-binary, I think. Probably. I don't know exactly but I mean, it was interesting. I had this girlfriend at the end of university and we used to go out. We used to go to like gay clubs and dance for like 6 hours and I'd be wearing like a skirt and stuff like that. But we were like sometimes in nightclubs, people sort of dress up and you become like a bit of a star in a nightclub. So she would sort of dress like as an angel or something like that with like wings and stuff like that and have a Barbie magic wand and stuff like that. And we'd like get photographed in nightclubs as like, oh, look at these, look what's happening in this nightclub. Isn't it fun? Someone's dressed as, I don't know,
right.
Roman centurion and someone's painting themselves red as a devil. And look at these two, they're in this sort of using makeup and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And what about your sexuality? Well, you always always lean into the being Britain's most famous bi-curious comedian or something. Is that a real reflection of your adolescence? Did you fool around with guys?
Yeah, I'd say so. But again, it just almost seems odd because it always feels like a sort of like these kind of things feel like it's like a big deal to talk about it. This is like I don't really understand
it is
why
for some
it's such
people,
a big
but
deal.
then it's not if it's not, isn't it? I mean, it's like Eddie Izzard. It's only as big a deal as one makes it.
Yeah, so I was always at kind of home with that as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think my life would be a lot simpler if I was just gay. Because everyone assumes okay. I'm really drawn to gay thing.
Yeah.
Really like gay culture. It's interesting because Matt Lucas is gay. And he's like into football but he's into musicals as well, actually. But I'd say and he likes ABBA. So anyway, I'd say it's just the football thing, actually. But
he's more traditionally heterosexual in his interests. You mean
only maybe the football.
Only the football.
Now I come to think of it. But yeah, I'd say probably I'm sort of camper than him.
Yeah.
It's hard. I don't know.
I mean, being gay is easy. It does make things easier. Speaking as someone whose first relationships were all with girls and then married a guy. Now, when people ask, I can just say that I'm gay and I don't have to go into details. Nobody's like, well, how gay exactly? They're just like, all right, you're married to a bloke.
But
it becomes a binary thing, which is frustrating in some ways because it flattens you into like a representative of some community or other.
And I think probably not everybody, but a lot of people probably are somewhere on a kind of spectrum, aren't they? Because I mean, it's just bound to be. I mean, just you see it all around you, don't you? So,
well, if you're bi-curious, you do. If you were straight, you'd walk straight past those waggling penises and give them pay nary any attention to them, David.
What I'm saying is, there are probably plenty of straight men who have interests in that direction.
Yes,
and probably again with girls. I think men are more sort of wound up about it. I think than girls are.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Not always. But they're saying that I'm 53. Maybe if you're like 18, 19 now, you don't think like that. Which would be good if you don't.
At the risk of getting myself into trouble with my LGBTQIA plus peers, I do think that our community, so to speak, has been partly responsible for making it more difficult for people to come out and for bi-curious straight guys to just sort of fool around, because the pride thing has become so intense that I think it feels to young guys that they have to open up an entire Pandora's box of identity issues if they wanted to go there. You know, it's like all of a sudden you're going to have to join a parade and you're going to have to be straddling a giant inflatable penis, you know, driving down the main street. It's like,
I know what you mean. There's a certain identity.
Like, you know, can it not mean anything?
It feels like from the outside, it feels like there's quite a lot of things that kind of, cultural identity that goes with it.
Yeah.
For gay men, it feels that way.
Like, do I have to vote a certain way and dress a certain way and look at? Well,
that's why it's quite interesting when you meet like gay Republicans and things like that. I've got a very close friend, who's like works on Wall Street. And he's gay, and his partner's gay as well. They're both gay. And
that's good. That's fortunate.
It made life easier. Anyway, but he's a big. I've had the sort of Trump conversation with him, and he's like, he's the Wall Street guy. He's always going to vote Republican,
right?
And I find it kind of odd. Although Trump actually isn't. There's not much evidence of him being homophobic, I don't think.
I mean, the man wears makeup every day and high heels,
but I don't think he's actually. He may be a lot of things. Obviously misogynistic and racist, but the homophobia isn't. I don't think.
No, I mean, I think he's.
I don't think it's quite been expressed. He's probably anti-trans, though, isn't he?
Well, I don't even know that he cares. His policies probably are.
Yeah, I think there were.
He's probably just a 70-something, rich white dude, straight dude. He probably just has views that align with most white 70-something.
I don't know.
Men.
I think he's evil. I don't think.
I'm talking specifically about towards gays.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I don't know. He was a big fan of Elton John.
There you go. Enough said. How did Daffod come about?
Daffod came about because when me and Matt were in the National Youth Theatre.
This is the I'm the only gay in the village character for people who don't remember their Little Britain.
There was a guy who was there who was Welsh, and he come up to people and say, "I'm Shadwell and I'm bisexual." And so we were sort of thinking about that and the fact that Shadwell, that he sort of like he'd say that, but he never seemed to have a partner or anything like that, and so there was a slight sense that he owned that space, and that sort of made him special. And so I think that's what we were trying to feed in with the Daffod sketches.
Right.
That he liked being the only gay in the village and didn't like there being someone else.
You said there was another guy on campus who was gay, but this bloke didn't want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a long time ago now, so I don't know how well my memory serves me. But yeah, it was a sense of his whole identity was gay, but it was unclear whether he did anything about it exactly. And so that's what we're feeding into. I mean, it's quite in some ways, it's quite a sophisticated idea. Because he's in this village where it's sort of bemoaned being gay, but then like, so everyone else in the village is gay.
Yeah, and he's using it more as a marker of his own exceptionalness than anything else.
I thought he was quite a sweet character, actually. I thought he was sweet, and it was very...
I mean, your recollection may be off, but in the show that we're doing, you claim that there was another bloke.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of he was the only gay in the National Youth Theatre, and he sort of... I don't want to,
all right,
put words into his mouth, but I feel like I felt like that's how it felt from the outside. That it was like I'm like the gay one or the bisexual one, and so that's me. So no one else can quite own that because I'm the one. And it is if you're the it's nice having something special about you, isn't it? That you go into a group of people and you're going to stand out because of a reason.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Yeah. And
I mean, everyone instantly knows who you are as well.
Yeah,
don't
that's
they?
right.
Because there's often people.
He's the gay.
Yeah, you've met him. Yeah, he's Welsh and he's gay, and he's he's very sort of forthright about it. And also, this was like the end of the 1980s, and it wasn't, it wasn't like everyone who was at the youth theatre who might have been gay was gay. I mean, there was no one out at my school.
Yeah.
Nobody. It was unthinkable.
Right.
Unthinkable.
Right. So it was still a thing.
Oh, massively.
When the sketch was being...
Massively, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we were in the youth theatre, it was still a thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even in the early 2000s, wasn't it? I mean, it's not like gay marriage was legal anywhere at the time that Little Britain was being made.
No, and there was still an age of consent vote in the UK when Tony Blair was... it was the end of the 90s, I think, when John Major was Prime Minister.
Don't know.
Well, it was 21, the age of
Don't know
consent. And then
English civil rights law.
And then there was a vote, and it weirdly went down to 18 and not 16. It's like weird.
Yeah. And one thing that's interesting about the sort of provocativeness of Little Britain is that you've said that Lou and Andy, the sketch with the person in a wheelchair who actually doesn't need the wheelchair, and the whole conceit of the sketch is that he, gets up and ends up sitting back down without his carer realizing it. That was the one that your producers were most worried about getting backlash for. Not the cross-dressing, not the gays, not the putting on face paint to look like people of different races, all of the host of things that would get you cancelled in the 2020s. Just sailed by.
Well, there we are. It just shows cultures change, isn't it? I mean, I was listening to Phil Spector records this morning. You know Phil Spector?
Yeah.
He's a producer. And there's a song, I can't remember who sings it, but it's like, he hit me and it felt like a kiss is the lyric. And it must be like probably early 60s. And it's just, I was just listening to it thinking, God, this was the sort of song that, people bought and listened to. And I don't know whether there was a big furore about it. I've never heard there was. And that's how much things have changed.
Yeah.
That's a popular song of the time.
And you'd never got complaints from people in wheelchairs about the sketch that the producer was most worried about. I don't think we did, but it was a bit of a different landscape then, because if you wanted to complain, you had to get them the BBC phone up, register a complaint and stuff like that. So you didn't just tweet.
No. I mean, but sometimes the BBC would they had a thing called Jerry Springer, the Opera, which was a big hit show. That actually I think started off in Edinburgh. It's got Richard Thomas and Stuart Lee, I think, put it together anyway. And it was like, I think it's got something like 50,000 complaints. It was the highest number ever, like 100,000 or something. I can't remember exactly. It was a huge number. And so I think we sometimes did get some complaints, but like 100 or something. So I can't remember specifically what they were about.
When you meet people in wheelchairs who are fans, what do they say?
Well, generally they say, "Oh, it's like Lou and Andy, isn't it? You be Lou and I'll be Andy."
And they want their selfie taken.
We're having a photo, are we? You enjoy it? Oh, I don't like it. That sort of stuff. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? About representation and stuff, and like, like it's a comedy show, but I still think, if you're a member of a minority, I don't think you'd necessarily. It's not a given that you would therefore not like being represented, is it? Because, I mean, it's not like you've lost your sense of humor or something. It's like, so someone in a wheelchair can still find that funny. And I think that's the test in a way. It's like, say you had a joke which was somehow about race or disability or being gay or whatever. If you can tell that joke in front of the person who is representative of that group, then I think it's probably okay.
Right.
Like, I got Jewish friends, and it's like, I've got this, like, there's a great Jewish joke. It's one of my favorite jokes. I'm going to tell you. It's this Jewish mother's walking along. It'd be better if I was Jewish saying this, but I think but it's a joke that without any hesitation, I would tell all my Jewish friends. So this mother's walking along by the coast with her son. She's a Jewish mother and the son, and they're walking along, having a lovely day, but suddenly a huge wave. Do you know this joke?
I do, but that's because Zeps is a Jewish name. So
okay. So this huge wave sweeps onto the land and pours her son far out to sea, and she gets down on it. He says, "Please, please, please, God, please deliver my son back to me." And then the wave comes back, and the son is safely delivered back onto land. And then she gets back down on her knees and says, "He had a hat." It's such a good joke. It's such a good joke. I feel like it's quite a. It's sort of, I don't know.
My dad was born in a refugee camp, during World War II, of Jewish parents, and he told that joke all the time.
It's a great joke, isn't it?
Great joke about nothing.
I think
is
it's
ever enough.
It's one of my favorite jokes, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, the question then becomes who gets to be the representative of the group, right? When you say that,
well, I think it's never really likely to be an individual, is it? It's going to be a sort of.
I mean, what's happened now is that it seems like we've got a sort of heckler's veto where whoever wants to jump up and down loudest enough and say that's unacceptable gets sort of defined in contemporary culture as the representative of the group. Even if there's a silent majority of people from the group who isn't offended, there's a lot of taking offense on behalf of groups.
It's also hard to know, if you're, minorities can still be a relatively large group of people, and the idea that everyone would have the same sort of sensibilities is kind of, it doesn't bear, it can't really be true, can it? It's like saying like all gay men like Kylie Minogue or something like that. I
don't even like Kylie Minogue.
You don't like Kylie Minogue?
No.
I love Kylie Minogue.
Of course you do, you're gay.
No, but it's a sort of thing, isn't it? Why would everyone think the same thing? And actually it's interesting that people have different opinions about things. And like when I was growing up, there was this sitcom, Are You Being Served?
Yes.
Hilarious. And there was a character, Mr. Humphreys, who was the gay character, who famously, went, there's a man here and he needs to be measured up for a dress. Are you free, Mr. Humphreys? I'm free. It was hilarious. But some people probably say that's a negative stereotype. Some people, and other people say it was brilliant. It was this funny character who everyone loved, was on this much-loved sitcom at 7:00 on a Wednesday night. And so the whole country could see this character. And I don't think there's necessarily, that's just interpreting something differently. And no one's right or wrong. So everyone has different opinions about it. And I think that, I don't know, it's just the way it is. I mean, why would everyone agree on one way of reading something? We read all these things differently, don't we?
Yes, but then is it reasonable for us to have imposed universal new norms like it's always wrong, for example, for a white person to dress up as a person of color? Like that is now a cultural rule. A white person cannot play a person who's not white.
It's fair enough, yeah. I mean, I think it was, it does feel now, it doesn't feel right, does it? So therefore, I think you'll find anyone doing it. I mean, you saw some people playing around with those ideas sometimes. I mean, we had a sketch in the first series of Little Britain where we played, black and white minstrels, is what they were called in the UK. Obviously,
yes.
people,
yeah.
And there was even a show when I was growing up, there was a show on television, a sort of Saturday night show with people dressed as minstrels with the sort of straw hats and white people with a black face. And they'd sing songs. I hated the show. I mean, I just didn't understand what it was. I didn't even know. I was only about 5%. I didn't know it even was representing black people. I just thought it was bizarre.
Yeah.
And I hated the songs. My granny used to watch it. Yeah, Ronald Swanee, and it was like, awful.
Right.
And it was on the BBC anyway. So when we
was it a satire of like
no, it was just,
or was it a?
No, it wasn't a satire. It was just that was a sort of a form of entertainment. Well, it was just seen as a form of entertainment.
Wow.
It's the black and white minstrel show.
Wow.
Weirdly, and Lenny Henry, who's the most famous black comedian in the UK, he was on it as a sort of teenager. It's weird.
Very weird.
Yeah, but, that's the past as a foreign country, isn't it? But what I was going to say was, in the first series of Little Britain, we had these sketches of minstrels. Me and Matt played these two minstrels as if we were in the black and white minstrel show. And they were basically suffering from racism. They were suffering from racism. So it's quite a kind of sophisticated
But you can't, there is no sophistication anymore. I mean, Sarah Silverman had a great episode of her show where, do you know about this controversy? The conceit was she wants to see what it's like to be a black person in America. So she puts on a minstrelly blackface and goes out, and people tell her that she's a horrible, awful person because she's in blackface, and she misinterprets that as being them. She's like, wow, it was really bad to be a black person in America. I can't believe how mean everybody is. But that episode satirical. Itself has been pulled from
it was quite interesting actually when that happened, and you found out how many different shows had in some way or another done that. There was actually there's the episode of the Golden Girls where I think two of the ladies or something have mud packs on, and then a black lady comes into their house, and she says, and one of them, we're not black, and it was like, so there's so many different ways in which people played with those ideas, and they all had their own contexts in one way or another.
Yeah. But no context has saved any of those.
No, the only one I can think of is Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder.
How has that escaped?
Because I think it's
the mob.
Because I don't know, maybe because it's a sophisticated joke about an actor who thinks he can play any part, and that's what the film's about. I mean, someone might have a problem with it. I don't know. And there's also sometimes examples of like, it's different, but like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America and Coming to America 2 plays he's amazing at it.
An old Jew.
Oh,
an old white Jew.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Who's going to...
Well,
is anyone upset
that's different,
about that?
isn't it? Because there's a whole thing about punching up versus punching down.
Different. I totally get it's different. But I kind of like that he did it still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I thought, it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because under the new norms, that's fine because you're punching up, not punching down, because supposedly black people are underneath white people in the power system. But the idea of an incredibly wealthy and famous entertainer being underneath a working class Jewish old white man is weird as well.
I don't know. I kind of think there's just danger of overthinking it. You see him play that character. At first, you don't even know it's him because the makeup's so great. And he's just brilliant at it. And actually, the conceit of the film is he plays a few roles anyway.
Yes. And
so, to my mind, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an old Jewish man, so it's not for me to say, but I think
I'm an aging.
It doesn't seem to me to be in what I would consider.
No, of course
offensive.
not. I mean, an old Jewish man wouldn't take umbrage at such a thing anyway.
I feel it's unlikely.
They're unlikely to be hyper woke. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are other examples of it. I mean, it's interesting. I was watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and there's quite a lot of people browned up in that playing parts of, like, he has a fight with this guy who's like Sikh guy, but it's actually this British wrestler called Pat Roach.
And they've just done him up as a...
Yeah, he played other parts in the other ones, but they're just, and there's amazingly, I was watching a documentary, and in Live and Let Die, there's this part of Rosie Carver, so the Bond film. She's this black CIA agent, and there's a bit where she comes into a door and Bond kind of throws her over his shoulder, not knowing who it is. And it was actually a white stuntman, blacked up because whatever, with an afro wig. Yeah, it was quite interesting.
It is amazing.
I mean, I'd seen the movie. I never guessed it because it goes by in a second.
Of course.
But again, it's sort of curious, isn't it? But,
no, I mean, my dad was an actor, and like he played in one Australian show, he played a Vietnamese person. Like, it's unimaginable now to think of a white actor being browned up with fake eyes, like not as a caricature, but like they couldn't find a single Vietnamese person in the world.
Well, Othello used to be, until the 80s, I'd say. The BBC Shakespeare, I'm pretty sure it's Anthony Hopkins.
Yes, that's right.
Michael Gambon, who I work with, who played Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films, he said he was the last white actor to black up as Othello. And he said one time he'd got really drunk the night before and forgot to put the makeup on for the matinee. I
mean, most people don't know what a Moor is anyway, so you could just get away with it with a modern audience.
I mean, it's but these, all these progressions are interesting, aren't they? You don't want things to stay the same. You want things to change.
Yes.
And it's exciting.
You just want them to change in ways that make sense.
Yeah. And change is mostly positive, not always, but it's mostly moving forward.
Do you miss TV and do you miss live performing? Do you want to go? I mean, now you're basically a fantastically successful writer who's written 43 children's books and sold 60 million copies. But does part of you go, my future still resides in performing or television?
Oh, yeah. Completely, yeah. I mean, I only really started writing because I wanted to be a comedian, and I saw that comedians in the era that when I was sort of consuming comedy in the 80s, a lot of the comedians I admired, not all, but a lot of them were writing their own sketches and creating their own characters, like Monty Python. They're the writers and performers, aren't they? And it's a coherent group. And things like The Young Ones, Rick Mail wrote on that. And so that's what I was thinking, oh, okay, that's what you need to do. So that's why I started writing. And then I realized that I felt that writing, for me at least, was the most creative part. And I felt I was stronger as a writer than I was as a performer. But the whole reason I wanted to do anything was to do comedy shows. So yeah, I would like to do that more. Yeah, I would like to do more of that. I mean, so me and Matt are plotting various things. So, that may come to pass, which I hope it will. Because there's something about that is special. I don't know, always feels special to me. And writing is solitary, because even when me and Matt were writing comedy shows together, it was a social occasion. It was just the two of us, but it's like, okay, I'm going to come round to your house at 10 o'clock in the morning and we're going to probably chat about what we saw on TV last night and have a bitch about a couple of people. And then eventually I'd say, Matt, we really need to start working now.
Let me get dressed up in a dress and let's
But then we'd write, and then maybe go out to like have some noodles for lunch and and then by about 5 o'clock we we couldn't think of anything else, and then we'd say, see you tomorrow morning.
It's good, isn't it? The collaborative aspect.
But when I'm writing my books now, obviously I write them completely on my own, and sometimes I do feel a bit cabin fever. I mean, if I have a day where I'm just in writing my books, and then in the evening I'm just in and not singing away, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I need a bit more stimulation. So I
it's a weird life, isn't it?
It is a bit. I mean, it's very solid. I mean, people ask, people say, oh, Roald Dahl had a writing shed, so where do you write? And I would say, well, it doesn't really matter where you are, as long as you're not around other people. That's my feeling.
Also, the world is so different.
You need to be alone with your thoughts.
That's right.
I mean, some people can do it on a train with some headphones. I can do it on a train.
Yeah.
Or a plane.
And that's a good thing as well.
But I wouldn't want to sit in a cafe.
Right.
Yeah, personally. And also, with me and Matt, when we were creating characters and things, I felt I could never do it if someone else was there. It was a weird thing. It feels quite private to me being creative. I can't quite explain it, but I feel inhibited. So sometimes people would want to make a documentary or something, film. That's always felt tense about that. I always felt it changed the dynamic. I feel like you've got to be totally free. For me, there's no better place than being in a rehearsal room. You're playing with things, you're finding what's funny, what's not. You can throw in completely outrageous kind of things and immediately dismiss them. There's not the tension of we're filming and we've only got 10 minutes left and the light's going down and we've got to get this shot done. And that, for me, when they say action, I get a little bit tense. I need to kind of work on that because I don't think it's good. But in the rehearsal room, where you're just playing. And also when me and Matt wrote and writing each other's character, I'd become Marjorie Dawes and do my, I mean,
that's
just because it was easy, that was how I could write it by, write it with him. But the way I could do it is that she says this, oh, such a pretty face in the middle there or whatever. It came out of me forming. So it was lovely. And so often we wouldn't really decide who was playing. It felt natural normally who would play what part, but sometimes we held back on it. Just because, I don't know, it's sort of in a partnership, it felt like the right thing to do.
Well, I hope you guys can get back in a writing room and back in a rehearsal room. And
yeah,
back
we've
on
definitely
television.
been in a writing room, but it's just that, when we were, it's just a bit different now, isn't it? One is we're older, but it's sort of, there are less comedy shows on. It's more panel shows and stand-up specials and those kind of things more than, I mean, I don't think there's any sketch show on television anymore. that I can think of. Well, there's Saturday Night Live. But in the UK, I can't think that there is really anything at the moment. So it's weird. And there's not many new sitcoms or anything like that. There's lots of comedy dramas, stand-up specials, and panel shows, and obviously podcasts and things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, when you say comedy dramas, there's a lot of sort of reasonably pretentious, high-budget streaming things that are basically just sort of dramas, but every 5 minutes you go, huh. And they build themselves as comedy dramas.
Yeah, but I tell you what, I thought was the kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm was the show that I most dealt with all these incredible taboo subjects, and in such a way. I mean, I've never heard anyone complain about it, but I mean,
it's incredible.
It finished, and I went back to the very beginning, and so I started watching the whole thing again, and I was in awe of it anyway, but I'm just like, this is genius. And the way he can deal with all kinds of subjects like disability, race, sexuality, because he's basically always putting his foot in it, isn't he?
Yes, and he's always the butt of the joke.
Yeah, I think that's probably why.
Yes.
And he's like, he did a joke about Chaz Bono, who is Cher's now son.
Yeah.
Who
a trans man.
Yeah. Chaz is in the scene, in the sketches. So I think,
is that the episode where the trans guy who transitions has a huge penis?
Yeah. And Chaz has a huge penis. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, you can understand getting away with that because the character is not transphobic. The character is just really impressed by the fact that someone who's transitioning from being a woman to a man has chosen to have a gigantic penis because you can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's offensive, and I don't think maybe no one would, but I'm just saying he's so intelligent and his humor is so sophisticated in lots of ways that he can deal with these subjects with such intelligence that I think it doesn't seem like people would complain, because I feel like he's thought these things through and he's so intelligent he can deal with all these subjects.
And we may be getting to a point at which even when people do complain, everyone's a bit fed up of the complaining.
Well,
and they're just like, it is funny and it's not coming from a bad place. So
I mean, it's complicated, isn't it? Because if someone doesn't like something, does that mean it shouldn't exist? I mean, Life of Brian was banned when it came out. In Ireland, you couldn't see it for about 25, 30 years or something like that. It was outlawed. It's outrageous, isn't it? People protested outside the cinemas in America. I mean, and so not everyone likes it. I think it's like the funniest film ever made, but we can't not have Life of Brian because someone doesn't like it, can we? Even then, it's not. Does it just somebody thinks it's offensive, and maybe it's trying to be offensive? It's very complicated. This, I think we've got into a place where we sometimes think if something's offensive, it shouldn't exist. But a lot of things set out to be offensive. So where does that leave those things? I mean, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And it's just, I look at like the photographs of Robert Mapplethorpe, the gay photographer. American gay photographer.
How frequently do you look at the photographs?
I love Robert Mapplethorpe, and I own a couple of photographs. And I went to see an exhibition of his in New York, and it still has not lost its desire to shock, because of the sexual nature of the photographs. But they're now considered art.
Yeah,
well, they are art, but probably not to everybody. And some people would probably question why it's in a sort of, major gallery. I don't know. It's just, I don't really know why we seem to need to have we need everyone to agree on something. I feel like that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
I feel like some people go, well, I think that's really offensive and shocking and stuff. And other people go, well, I think it's funny. And,
Well, that's because you believe in a free society.
Yeah.
Not everybody does.
I saw an interview with John Waters, the filmmaker. And one of the things, is it in Pink Flamingos that Divine eats a dog turd?
I'm not enough of a John Waters aficionado to recall.
Okay. And so he filmed a scene where Divine is following around this dog. And they said they fed the dog for ages. And the dog, it's all captured in one shot. Divine eats a dog poo in the film. Now, if you're not setting out to shock and offend people, and it sort of is meant to be, well, it's disgusting on every single level. But at some point, that crept into John Waters' head in the 1970s, and Divine, for whatever reason, was up for it. That happened. So where does that? I know there's not really a victim of that exactly, but like what? Where do we place that in the?
Well, you haven't talked to the dog. Maybe the dog didn't like it.
It's kind of gross out, I guess.
It's gross out.
Yeah.
I want to see Little Britain 2026 begin with you eating a dog turd first.
It's not going to
First sketch.
It's not going to happen.
David, I'm going to let you go and get ready for your shows.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for
well, hang on. What
speaking
time
with
is
me.
it?
And well, it's a little. We've just gone an hour.
Do you want to do another 10 minutes?
Yeah, we can do another 10 minutes. What should we talk about in the final 10 minutes? What do you like the most when we're talking about it on stage? Simon Cowell is good.
What do I like talking about on stage? I kind of like entertaining people the best.
Yeah.
You know, I like making people laugh. It's such a thrill.
It's great.
Such an amazing feeling. I'd sort of forgotten what it felt like. But you know, if you're not in front of an audience all the time, I'm really a stand-up. I'm really close with Jimmy Carr, one of my absolute best friends, and he is out 6 nights a week doing his stand-up. So he never, I don't think, loses touch with what it is he does and stuff like that. So,
why don't you?
But also, writing books is
you?
very time-consuming.
Yeah,
I mean, it is incredibly. I'm not complaining, but it's not something. I know people think, oh, it's a children's book, so you know.
Well, no, not when you're doing 43 of them. I think most people think you couldn't possibly be writing them all, so he must have a ghostwriter. I just work. I just spend a lot of time doing it, and it takes up my life. And really, if there's any space of time where it's not filled, that's what I'm thinking about doing. So I'm actually really looking forward to the flight on the way home, because I know there's 2 flights, one to Singapore, and that's what I think I'm going to stay up for the first flight to Singapore, and I'll probably write for 10 hours. I mean, I just was in Japan. Sorry to break it to you, but Perth is quite close to Singapore, so you're not going to get 10 hours. How far is it? Flight. I think it's only about 4 hours or something. Oh, well, anyway, I'm looking forward to being on the plane, whatever plane. Yeah. Because I know I'll have no distractions. Yeah. And it's great. I love riding on a plane. Yeah, I love it. And I just feel, it's interesting. I never feel lonely when I'm doing something creative like that, even on my own, because I'm with the characters, the stuff, and I love it. Do you ever have resistance to writing? That? Like, you know, I don't want to say writer's block, because it's not the same as not knowing what you're going to write, but I think it's really hard starting. Yeah, I think starting a whole new book. Your kitchen ends up very clean on a day when you've got a deadline. I think it, for me, starting is hard. I look at it this way. I think, okay, I know it's not the same as climbing Everest, but you've got to write a book, right? And however way you look at it, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take quite a few months to do. So I'm at the foot of I'm at the foot of Mount Everest. I'm at the foot of a hill, a mound in my case. A grassy maybe knoll. For James Joyce, Ulysses, it is, but whatever. I'm looking at a task. Gangster Granny is compared to Mount James Everest Joyce. Of books. But anyway, I'm looking up thinking, oh God, it's so far to go. It's going to be such a struggle, and it's kind of hard to start. But then the further you go, and then at some point, it's like you're kind of going downhill. And then it's exciting, because when I start, I'm maybe only writing 500 words a day. Right. But then towards the end, because I know who all the characters are, I know what needs to happen, I might write 2,000 words in a day. Then do you get up looking forward to it? Yeah, getting back to it. I look forward to it. Yeah. I mean, because I like the creative work, and I'm proud of them, and I like getting it done. And so it's, and now I know there's an audience anticipating the next one coming out. And you can make yourself chuckle sometimes when you've come up with what you consider a good joke. So yes, I do like it, but just sometimes I just feel like I need a bit, I just wish there was a bit more, someone else was around. Yeah. And the other thing is you don't, when me and Matt would be together writing in a room, we would make each other laugh.
we'll make ourselves laugh, and we'd laugh together. It's great. When we're both laughing, we know we're really onto something. But I might think of a funny joke, one of my books, but I've got no one to tell.
Yeah.
Because no one will understand the context of it or anything.
What about writing adult novels?
They're too long.
They don't have to be, David.
I mean, yeah, if I had the idea. I mean, I think if you're a writer, you can, like maybe I'd like to write a play at some point. I mean, I've written a couple of film scripts, animated movie and stuff like that. So I see no reason why I wouldn't do that. But I'd be led by the idea rather than the, if I woke up tomorrow morning with an idea for a starting point for a novel for adults, and I felt it was strong, I would embark upon it, but I've not had that idea yet.
You're telling me you've had 43 good ideas for kids' books and 0 good ideas for adult books?
I haven't applied myself exactly, but I think in a way, but maybe, I suppose I don't really know what kind of voice I'd have as a writer for grown-ups.
That's interesting.
I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
And I think...
But don't you just start and try when you...
I suppose so.
Yeah.
I suppose people write sometimes in genres when certain writers do, not every writer. And then there's kind of, literature as well, isn't there?
Right,
Which is then the style of the writing really has to be something quite extraordinary.
Right, but you can write a
I think I could
funny
write,
detective
I could write a
novel.
comic. I'm sure I could write a comic novel. But see, I am in it. I would often say that it would be good if I could clone myself, because then I could be getting on with that adult novel and doing the children's book and doing a tour like this and working with Matt and appearing on television. And, because sometimes it's quite weird having different parts of your career because of the people who, the publishers don't care about the other stuff. I'm not saying they should, but they don't. So they're, well, we need a book on this date. And I've got to go doing that. Well, everyone thinks their thing should take precedence.
Of course, yeah.
So sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. But
I mean, that's why deadlines are useful.
Yes,
and
I feel very
live
lucky
events are useful.
to have deadlines.
Yeah.
Because I know that there are lots of people out there who are going, I'd love to write a book, but they don't have a deadline. They don't have anyone to read it. And in a way, they often don't get it done because there's not the pressure. And actually, pressure is not always, it's not necessarily a bad thing because it focuses your mind.
Was your collaboration with Matt a substitute for the pressure of a deadline in the early days in giving you motivation to write?
I think, there's times when you're just writing for yourself, just coming up with ideas and stuff. And then there are times when you've actually got a job.
Right.
So they're quite different. Actually, it's quite fun being in the first place, but I don't think you get as much done as when it's a job and your deadline. So the scripts have got to be on June and the pre-production starts this date and stuff like that. So I don't mind that that pressure. I think it's really good.
Do you want to talk about Simon Cowell?
Well, it depends what you want to know.
I'm intrigued by your fractious relationship with him. And, well, we talk a bit in the show about him being sort of famously thin-skinned and you needling him about rumors about his sexuality. And that tickles me.
Well, I'm glad it tickles you. Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I was like, the court jester figure, and he was the king. We're in the court of King Simon, and I'm the jester, and sometimes the jester can get sort of won over on the king in a way. It's kind of interesting relationship, but I know that that's one of the things that people really liked about the show was our interaction. Because at the end of the day, if you're on a judging panel, and there's so many of these shows now, aren't there, in various forms all around the world. In fact, there's these big brands, The Voice goes all around the world, Pop Idol and all this. American Idol it was called, wasn't it? In America. But if everyone just says, I thought it was good, I didn't like it, I thought it was good, you're through to the next round. It's only really interesting if people are disagreeing, discussing. That's really what a lot of people are tuning in for. So but it happened very naturally.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it's interesting because if you're funny, you can sort of get the better of people who who may have a lot more status than you, but somehow in front of an audience, it's a little different.
Well, especially if they're precious.
But it was a great job.
And when you
loved
were
doing it.
you say that there was like a Mr. Gay UK who came out and did a thing, and then you turned to Simon and said, "Now let's hear from Mr. Bi-Curious UK." And this was something that he didn't like, and you would make jokes, and they would get they would get cut. I mean,
no one really wants to be the butt of a joke. And I suppose that one isn't really a family friendly joke that would. That's likely to end up in the show at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there'd be some kids going, "Oh, Daddy, what's bike?" So it's not. But I always wanted to do jokes in the room that were just for in the room,
right?
Because I think you have to. Because I think the audience there, whenever you're doing any TV show, the audience who've turned up to actually see it being filmed, they need something extra because they go, "I can't believe it," and so said this and that happened, and you'll never end up seeing that on TV.
And they've just waited for hours as well, so they want to show.
And so it was good for that. But also, I think when you're a comedian, I think people don't kind of necessarily think that if you are in a situation where you're improvising all the time, you have half a second to decide whether the thing that is just shooting through your mind that you should say it or not. You have half a second, because if you wait too long, the time is off. You need to say it then.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you would always get things exactly right is completely pie in the sky. Because I mean, who in a situation where there is not a script, who's not going to say the odd thing that they say. I mean, I often do something. I say, "Can you cut that out? It wasn't funny," or something. They go, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
And you can't be in front of an audience for 10 hours a day and think that everything you say is gold and everything is appropriate or whatever. I mean, it was fun. I like being the show. It was like a sort of the circus came to town. That's what I really liked about it.
Yeah.
But it was quite funny. Like, I remember when I started doing the show, I think we were in Blackpool, and a lady came on, and we said, "Oh, what are you going to do for it?" She said, "Poetry," and the whole audience booed. Whoa! There's no poetry that could be acceptable to you. There's not a thing, not even a funny limerick or something. It was like, "Oh, poetry, no!" And there was also a very telling thing. It was early on. These two guys came on, and so we didn't know anything about them. And so, "Oh, how do you know each other?" They said, "Oh, we're a couple," and the audience laughed, which I was just thought was extraordinary. Right. And they said, "What are you going to do?" Ballroom dancing again, like hoots of laughter. Right. I mean, this is probably about 12 years ago, but still, I'm not excusing it because it's 12 years ago. I was quite like, "What?"
Yeah.
And then they danced very well, and they danced to "You Raise Me Up," the song "You Raise Me Up," which is a very euphoric song. So in the 3 minutes from them saying that they were a gay couple and they ballroom dance, everyone laughing. By the end of the 3 minutes, when the whole audience is on their feet, that's the most extraordinary thing to witness. I thought, yeah, they're great, they're talented, the song's great, everything. But I was like, wow, what's all that about? So it was quite interesting observing a lot of those things.
Yeah.
It's quite a strange job because you're reacting. So it's really just about you reacting.
And how much of it are you seeing for the first time?
Everything. There's only a couple of times. Sometimes there would be that they'd say, "Oh, David, there's going to be a motorbike stunt." And so you're just going to be talked through it before it happens.
Yeah, right.
Which is only sensible, because they're going to say,
safety
you're going to lie down on the floor and he's going to jump onto the motorbike. So make sure you don't put your hand up or put your head up or something. I mean, that just seems...
Yes, of course.
That's just common sense. But that was the only time. Everything else was completely
Don't kill the judges.
No. I mean, the thing
Good
was...
rule of thumb.
The show... The most famous moment in the show's history is the Susan Boyle moment. And so... and I think that's what the show is, like a magic wand, isn't it? For her, you're sitting at home with your cats, no one knows who you are. Magic wand, you're now the most famous person in the world for a period of time. And I think so the reactions always have to be to be real, and then we need to be shocked.
Yeah.
For it to work. And so that's what the game was of it. But we'd always try and find and I think this is the last thing I should say. on the whole podcast. But we'd always sort of say, oh, when you came on, it was like a caterpillar. And then during the song, we watched you turn into a butterfly. And then, like, as a joke, when I'd be talking to the others, we'd say, we need to find a new way to say that, because we're constantly saying we thought you were a caterpillar and you turned into a butterfly. I'd say, as a joke, you were like a flaccid penis becoming an erect penis. We'd amuse ourselves with things like that. Obviously, we never said it, but it's just funny because we just kept on, I would say the same thing.
I'm going to think of that next time I see a judge on a talent show say you're a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.